Should we fall into the fall? We're starting a cult.
Well, now you're making me change my mind.
Just calm down. It's going to be a test afterwards. I hope you all took notes.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic, a discussion between a professional film critic and lecturer and me, his wife of 20 years, who just likes to watch movies for fun. I'm your co-host, Julia.
Hey everyone, this is Barry. How's it going?
And we decided to talk about 2006 Tarsem Singh's The Fall.
The Fall, yeah.
I didn't want to mess that up.
2000. I mean, I saw it in 2008. I mean, I guess this movie had such a long gestation, and it was a real labor of love for its filmmaker. At one point, Tarsem was best known as the director of The Cell. Did you ever see that?
No, I was too scared to see it.
Yeah, and you were probably right to see it.
To not see it?
Yeah, no, I like the film now. I didn't like it when it came out. It's gross, and it's really seriously weird. But looking at it a couple years ago, I think it's pretty wonderful. But it took me a while to get to that point. The Cell, for those of you who don't remember, it was one of the many post-Silence of the Lambs serial killer thrillers. And it was Jennifer Lopez, who you normally, it was like you can't get Jodie Foster, you get Jennifer Lopez. That's what you do.
Of course.
And the bad guy was played by Vincent D'Onofrio. The whereabouts of where he was hiding his victims is only in his head. So she has to go into the mind of a serial killer. And it's visually extraordinary. And some people said it was style over substance, and some people couldn't get past the violence. And I think I was one of those people when it came out in 2000. Looking at the film a couple of years ago, I got to say I was really very taken by it. Not only because of The Fall, but also, I don't know, I guess maybe I've seen such hideous movies subsequently. It's like The Cell isn't quite as bad as I remember it.
You're like an artistic horror film? Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I didn't give The Fall much attention when it came out. I think I told you, like, the year this movie came out, theatrically, I had a chance to sit down with the actor and the director and to talk to them and actually watch the film at my favorite theater, the Mayan Theater in Denver, and I turned it down. Because I'm like,
mistake.
The guy from The Cell, I don't want to see his new... Oh, boy, was I wrong. Man, I still...
Big mistake.
Huge. Still regret that one. Yeah. Because I wound up seeing it at the end of 2008. This was the very first year I was writing professionally. And my editor said, okay, we need your 10 best of the year. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never been asked to do this before. So, professionally, I've got my notebooks. I do it all the time.
When you were 10, you were writing down
your
list.
Actually, I do. But anyway, so I was basically on the clock. I don't know if you remember this. And I went to Blockbuster Video and I rented like a stack of stuff. Like, okay, these are like the last movies I didn't see that came out in 2008. And it wound up being the last movie I watched that year.
The Fall?
Yeah, the last movie. And
did I watch it with you?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You did. And I don't think it was until like the second or third time we saw it together. We were watching it with friends.
Yeah.
And
okay, we were a little bit obsessed with this movie.
For a period.
Yeah, we saw it and we were like, everyone who comes over to our house, this is the movie they're going to watch.
You're going to get fed. We'll talk to you, but then we're going to watch The Fall.
Yeah. Get comfy.
We're starting a cult.
I know. Now that I think about that, it's a little weird.
Well, I wonder, like, how many friends do we have from that period?
Yeah. Please comment. Yeah. We were there.
We think they were trying to start a cult.
So
we
strange.
Don't know. Very strange. No, I mean, look, you're into something, you want to share it with people. I mean, look, like, one of my favorite memories, not to get too far off track, was I remember we wanted to watch the final episode of Breaking Bad, and we didn't have cable. And we were just happened to be talking to our dear friend who lived very close to us. And she's like, because she was a nice lady, very conservative. I didn't think she watched it. She's like, oh, yeah, we're going to watch it tonight.
Oh, yeah.
So we watched the final episode of Breaking Bad with her and her husband, who are very conservative Christians.
We sort of invited ourselves over.
I think so. But either way, like, it was amazing. We were having conversations about, about all the characters. I thought, wow, like, this is like, if you're in, you're in. So
yeah. Okay, we should jump into The Fall. Because we both really liked it.
Should we fall into The Fall?
Oh. No, we shouldn't do that.
I gotta say, one of the reasons, if one thing, I think the title, I don't know if it's really that much of a grabber.
It's not.
Even looking at the poster, I'm like, well, what is it? I just know it's from the director of The Cell, which, again, at the time, I think The Cell And I know other movie critics who feel this way. I think The Cell holds up really well, but I mean, you got to like go back into it. It's a lot better than it's more. It was accused of being style over substance, but so was this movie when it came out.
The reason I don't like the title is because you don't know what it is when you see the movie poster or anything, and it's just like our main character, the two main characters, they both fell and had injuries.
But just like The Cell, it's a title where it has more than one meaning. You know, it's the fall because it's a literal fall that takes place in the opening scene, and it's also about fall from grace. It's about kind of reacclimating yourself when you've hit a bottom in life.
Well, now you're making me change my mind.
So you know, everything about one of the things that's been a constant with Tarsem, he's always been accused of being one of these filmmakers where his sense of style is better than his sense of storytelling. Not the case here.
No.
This is a very layered story, and I wonder if people just didn't bother with it. The ones who didn't like it, I mean, the critics who adored this movie, and there were many, they rave and rant about the different narrative layers
all
here.
the layers.
And whereas the people who didn't like it, he looks like a perfume ad. And these are the same idiots who don't like Terrence Malick movies too. So
do you think
I'm not friends with all the movie critics.
Do you think he's on the level with Nolan with his like layers?
Yeah, but Nolan's had better luck subsequently. That's the thing, because it's not that. I mean, look, I don't know what it's like when you've had a hit and suddenly you have all these options. Sometimes you just make the wrong decision, and I think, I mean, we'll talk about it. The movies that he made after this one, some of them were successful and even popular, but I don't think he's ever matched his first two movies. You know, that happens. That's what happened to Richard Kelly after Donnie Darko. You know, Southland Tales and The Box. You know, they're not up to Donnie Darko, and he's been in movie jail, so to speak, ever since that happens.
We talked about The Box, if anybody is interested in hearing
that is a
more
prior
about that.
episode if you want to hear us yammer on about Richard Kelly's The Box. The Box, The Fall, The Cell.
All these amazing titles.
Yes.
Okay, well, The Fall opens with a black and white rendering of a 1920s silent film production, and it's sort of in slow motion.
Sort of. It is in slow motion.
Well, you're like, what's happening?
I mean, if anything, I'd say there's slow motion, then there's even slower motion.
Like extra slow motion.
Yeah, so if you think there's something wrong with your TV, no. I mean, it's slow, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it takes a little bit, like, you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is a movie you need to see more than once because everything connects well. But yeah, no, it's very mysterious what's happening in the beginning.
I mean, there's a dead horse that's like pulled out of the water, and you're like, oh no, this is not good. So then we cut to a rehabilitation hospital near Los Angeles, and we meet Alexandria. She's a 5-year-old girl, and she has...
The actress, is Kentika Untaru. This is her... For my understanding, this is the only thing she's ever done.
I think so.
And she was basically kind of an amateur actress who managed to get this huge role in this movie.
Yeah. So she broke her arm because of a fall.
Yeah.
And so she's walking around with her arm in a cast. It's just like up like this.
It's very ungainly.
So it's really cute because she's wearing like a sweater, but it's like only on halfway. And she carries this little box, and she just kind of walks around like this with her little box.
Yeah.
You would think like she would use her other hand, but I think she's like, well, this hand's not doing anything, so I might as well carry my stuff. So she's really adorable. She's of Romanian descent, and we learn that her immigrant family works in an orange grove, and she was up on a ladder. She fell down, and that's how she broke her arm. And I guess back in this time period, which was the early 1920s, you kind of just lived at the hospital until you were better. I mean, like, she's just by herself with other kids.
Well, to be fair, I mean, that may be the case, although this is, I mean, the movie is, I'd say a fantasy, a fable. Maybe not a fantasy. I think a fable is the way to say it.
So you think... this part is not grounded in reality.
I don't know how grounded in reality any of this movie is, and I'm okay with that because again, it's a movie. People get like really caught up. Like,
is it a true story?
Somebody watched the movie Nixon, and I think he was like they got the pencils wrong. Like, come on, man. give them a break. It's hard to recreate a lost time.
I'm watching all those details.
Those pencil erasers are not up to snuff. Yeah, no, come on, go easy, man.
Yeah,
no. So no, I'm okay with it's not complete a story. That's one of the things that drove me crazy about Oppenheimer. Like everyone's like Oppenheimer, scene for scene, even the paint he used was period correct. Like, just calm down, calm down.
Well, we have nothing better to do than nitpick these $1
I guess
million
so.
works of art.
Yeah.
Find something wrong
and
with
God
them.
forbid they get one thing wrong and it lacks 100% historical. It's a movie. It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's just a movie. It's going to be okay.
It'll be okay. Okay. So, Alexandria, she's working on a note in her room upstairs on a little piece of doily paper, and she drops it. She's going to give it to Nurse Evelyn, who's like her favorite nurse, who's really sweet, will sometimes kind of rock her to sleep at night, when she's having a hard time. And the note, instead of going to Evelyn, just kind of floats into another room with the breeze. And so this is where Alexandria meets a new patient named Roy, played by Lee Pace.
Lee Pace. And at this point, this is 2008, I think... Yeah, I think Pushing Daisies had been on by this time. I didn't know who he was, and I honestly didn't watch Pushing Daisies when it was on. But he was, I believe, the biggest name in this movie when it came out.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is, to pause in the narrative for a second, I mean, this was a $30 million movie. And if you have never seen this movie, The Fall, I mean, it looks like it cost at least twice that much. I don't know how... He got this made for $30 million, and maybe one of the ways was there's, Lee Pace is the name in the film. There's no big movie stars, so there's no movie star baggage, and everything is up on the screen. I mean, if this movie was $30 million, I mean, this is one of the best looking, one of the biggest, grandest $30 million I've ever seen. I mean, this is amazing. This is back when $30 million in the 70s would have given you something like Apocalypse Now. I mean, it really is that kind of film. It just, the grandeur is evident in almost every single scene.
Didn't they shoot in something like 30 countries?
They shot it all over the world, and they shot it for years. It's like
crazy.
30, I don't know. And if it comes out, it's like, actually, it was 80 million, I would be like, well, of course. Because, I mean, it literally, like, however you feel about this film, I mean, and for those of you who are, like, listening to this, like, I don't even know what this movie is. Yeah, do look at the trailer. Give it a look, because I mean, like, you would never guess. I mean, this thing looks like it's the size of a Marvel movie.
I think it's better than a Marvel movie.
Better than most.
Yeah, better than most. Okay,
it's better than Madam Web. We'll just put it that way.
Okay, all right. So Roy is a Hollywood stuntman, and he's paralyzed from the waist down, and the scene we see in the beginning is basically when it happened. When it happens, yeah. So he was doing this stunt. He fell off his horse, and now he's in the hospital. He's confined to his bed, and he's also pining over an unrequited love. So there was an actress, and now she's with the lead of the film that he was the stunt double for. So you kind of get a little bit of that in the movie, but it's not like a huge, like, I don't know. It's like they don't focus on it a ton.
I wonder how much this actually happens.
What? The stuntman falls in love with a leading lady?
It's like, man, I'm so in love with Blake Lively, but that stupid Ryan Reynolds is always around, man. I'm in the hospital. She's with him at the premiere. I bet there's a little bit of truth to this.
Yeah, the stuntman getting pushed aside.
Man, I was doing that movie with Bruce Willis, and like I'm so in love with Demi Moore, but then like I'm in a wheelchair, and he's at the Die Hard 2 premiere. Next thing you know, they're married. Like,
like the stuntmen are like, if it weren't for this major injury, I would have totally scored.
If it weren't for this major injury and this guy who is like so much richer and better looking than me. Who doesn't jump off a train for a living like me, I would have a shot. And I do wonder, I mean, like there's something, I mean, inevitably, even though you see what they go through, there's something so glamorous and cool about being a stunt person. But like, let's face it, they all don't look like Ryan Gosling and
The Fall Guy.
And The Fall Guy. Yeah, no, like it's these burly guys who like, they fall down, they have to get up immediately. I mean, it's a rough life. And I'm sure, not only are they standing in for people who are, who are the face of the character, but I'm sure it's like I'm around all these beautiful people, and it's like, oh, they think all I do is fall down and fall off a hill.
I also drive fast. No,
I'm more than that. I can fall down mountains. I'm capable of so much more than you think.
Yeah, they probably like really hate Tom Cruise too.
Well, especially when it's like, okay, I'll sit here. You could do the stunts. You can do everything. Fine. Only you're Ethan Hunt. We get it.
I mean, are we being disparaging to stuntmen? Because I'm sure there's like good-looking stuntmen.
Well, I'm honestly kidding. No, of course there's
okay.
good-looking stuntmen. No, I'm totally kidding. Of course, no.
Yeah.
I not only do I completely admire stuntmen, and there's guys like Buddy Joe Hooker who like one of the greatest. Buddy Joe Hooker is like Kurt Russell. He's known for like the guy can do anything in a car, anything, and he wanted to become a director too. So, no, stuntmen are freaking awesome. But I do wonder, because your job is to stand in for someone else, I can't imagine. I mean, of course, there's got to be some bitterness there, especially when you have actors who are like, yeah, man, I did all my own stunts. And then you watch the end credits, it's like, there's 14 people listed as stunt people. Which of your own stunts did you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they should have stuntman awards at the Oscars.
That's insane. Yeah. It's
crazy.
So crazy. Yeah,
I totally think
do that.
they have like, I think they should have best stunt, and then they pan to the stuntmen in the audience when they like show the stunt.
Whoever it was who jumped off the Nakatomi building with the fire in the back, that guy should win a Lifetime Achievement Award, because that's one of the greatest stunts ever. Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, they should just start with like, okay, Lifetime Achievements, all the stunts that you can think of, the free fall from Moonraker, like whoever like actually jumped out of a plane for a movie and lived to tell about it. Those guys, like Oscars.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a point that maybe it would like take away from the movie magic, but I'm like, we all know that they're doing it,
right? So. But that's the thing, though. I mean, if you really believe Daniel Craig is James Bond, you don't want to think about the 15 people who helped make that a reality.
Okay, so would that be a problem then? Like, would there be like stuntmen being like, hey, he only did like 2 seconds of that stunt and he got the award, and I did like
and sometimes
15 seconds.
That's the thing, exactly. The editing is also like sometimes it's and also there's the pride thing too. Like this is well known that sometimes men are doubled by women. Ooh. Yeah, so like I mean like there's a shot from a Friday the 13th movie where like the jock gets thrown out the window. If you frame it, freeze frame it on the way down, you can see it's clearly it's a woman standing.
Okay, well, our very first episode we did
Rad. Yeah.
And Lori Laughlin's stuntman is a guy in a wig.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes a woman is going out the window and it's a dude in a dress.
Yeah, and you can totally tell, and it's really funny.
Yeah. So I think there's that source of pride too. It's like, well, so Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, so she's your stunt person,
Oh yeah, right.
I'm sure they've all had. Well, because there's there isn't this magical stunt person who does. They typically have like the horse guy, the fall guy. Like there's always so. Okay. So no, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but
seriously, to make it clear, I love stunt people. I'm always in awe of them. But like to be clear, I understand the animosity at the core of this film, because it is about how a stunt person feels like even though he's a part of the magic of films, he's not able to have a real life outside of it. And when he's trying to, to have this relationship, he can't, not only because he's in a different bracket of person, but because he's not the movie star. And the movie star is pitted as the villain in this.
And now he's paralyzed in the hospital. So, okay, so Roy is befriending this little 5-year-old Alexandria, and he's kind of like ribbing her about the little note that she makes, and because he's like, is this even in English, and he starts to basically tell her this story that he's making up on the spot, and his story opens up with like Alexander the Great, and so we won't like go into like all the details of the story that he tells her. No,
but we should say the movie does show us Alexander the Great, and I gotta say, in the few minutes that it portrays Alexander the Great, it has the scale and the beauty of the Oliver Stone movie, which cost $100 million. And even just for a few minutes, it's like, my gosh, they went out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
It looks like these actors are all going through hell. I can't imagine
Mm-hmm.
a frame of this movie was fun to make for anybody. But it is, I mean, it is just spellbinding. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so for the few minutes that Roy is telling her this story and we get to see what she's imagining. This is her imagination, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I've described this movie to people, I say it's kind of like a Terry Gilliam film if Terry Gilliam made The Wizard of Oz. This idea of what is concrete grit reality versus this fantasy world that is just there's no limits to the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like, but because it's a period piece, the film always looks great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a frame in this movie that's ugly.
Oh, no. Yeah. But the parts of the story, like the story he's telling her, probably more vibrant. And then in the real world, a little more like sepia toned, like toned down. Not black and white, but...
Yeah, but it's this wonderful elevated reality where whatever they're going through currently, whatever their inner turmoil is, when we get to the fantasy version of it, everything is just elevated.
Yeah.
Everything is on a very mythic level.
Mm-hmm. So, he's telling her the story and then she interrupts him and she wants to know why he's making certain choices in the story. So it's really very sweet how they start this friendship.
And it's this wonderful back and forth of storytelling where, two people tell a story together and sometimes you're bouncing back and forth. There's editorializing. There's, you change it to fit whatever the standard is.
Yeah. Actors change because she tells him, oh, I don't, he makes one of she says, what does the bandit look like? And he's like, well, it looks like your dad. And she's like, well, my dad's dead. And so he's like, oh.
Yeah, it's about...
she turns Roy into the character.
It's about the creative process.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching a movie, but these are how movies are created. These are how narratives are constructed.
Okay, so then Alexander arrives the next day, and Roy is visited by another actor stunt double who lost his lower leg and walks with a peg leg. And he's urging Roy to accept a settlement from the studio for his injuries. And he's basically like, just do it. Like you need this money, right?
Yeah, this reminds me of Tom Mix, the great silent hero cowboy star of this era. I wonder if he ever went through something like this. And this idea of like, no matter how much you're hurting, no matter how awful you are mangled, you got to get back on the horse. You have to get back to work immediately because you will be replaced.
So he continues to tell, like Alexandria comes back, like I said, and he continues to tell the story. And now it's changed. I think he realized, like this Alexander the Great thing, he kind of like nixes that.
Yeah. And
he goes with these people that are stuck on a deserted island.
Yeah, we start with a fresh narrative, and he's purposely constructing it to hold Alexandria's attention.
So the whole thing is about how these characters, there's like 4 or 5 guys. There's the Hindi swimmer, called the Indian. And then she's imagining who these characters are with people that are working in the hospital.
Very Wizard of Oz, yes.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
Wizard
and
of
by
Oz.
the way, very Adventures of Baron Munchausen. For those of you watching this, if you love that movie, you'll love this one because it's very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so all of the characters are like talking about how they hate Governor Odious. And Governor Odious is played by...
The guy that Roy hates, the actor, the movie star who he's filling in for.
Yeah, so he kind of goes through like, well, this is why I'm mad at Governor Odious. So he gives them all backstories. I mean, there's Charles Darwin is one of the characters.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, Darwin's a character in this. Yeah.
Okay, so, they get off the island. There's this amazing scene with a swimming elephant.
I think that was when the movie completely had me because I've never seen that. I've never seen her in a movie before. I've never seen, the cameraman is a ways underneath looking at this elephant swimming. So you see these gigantic feet paddling. Never seen that in a movie before.
I know, because one of the characters can't swim. And so Darwin's monkey tells him that elephants can swim because, of course, that's a thing that would happen.
My friend Alika Seki, who's very well known in my community for being the guy who runs a wonderful comic book store and he's a real comic book authority, he'd always talk about the rule of 4 or the rule of 5. And that's where you have these characters, 4 characters or 5 characters. And the idea is if you were to smush them all together and make them into one, they'd be the perfect person. You pull them out, and they all represent. And the example we'd always give is like, well, Barry, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, they're
the best
they all have different,
example.
distinct personalities. If you were to smush them into one Ninja Turtle, they'd be the perfect turtle. You pull them all apart, they all have very distinct personalities.
I love how that's the example that he gave.
He came and taught a class on that. One time I was doing comic book cinema. I'm like, Alika, I'm doing Ninja Turtles. You got to come in, and he gave that. It was one of the things that he lectured on.
Okay.
Sharp guy. Thanks, Alika.
Well, should I say what all the characters are then? Because we have the Indian, and Alexandria imagines like a friendly man from her orange grove.
Yeah.
Then we have Luigi, who's a munitions expert, and he's the peg-legged stunt double who visited Roy. And then we have Charles Darwin,
who has a monkey with him, right?
Yeah. Who Roy describes as an English naturalist. And then the Black Bandit, who starts off as her father and then becomes Roy.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool
while.
how that happens. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which one's the one with the bombs? That's the munitions guy?
Yeah, that's Luigi.
He is my favorite. I mean, it's very Wile E. Coyote. He always has like a stick of dynamite with a...
Yeah, and he's ready at all times to like light it. And then I love it how sometimes Alexandria is like, what about the bomb? And Roy is like, oh, he cut the little thing off and then it didn't explode.
That's something I miss.
He has to come up with ways that keep the story going.
I love it. No, I mean, like, I have such a soft spot for that. I don't like in modern movies how it's always like the digital read, like 29 seconds, 28 seconds. It's always a digital. It's not fun. Like in Westerns, they always got these sticks of dynamite that are... I love that. So this movie is all about that.
Yeah. Or he just like licks his fingers and he's like,
right.
Oh, that's no longer a danger.
Yep.
So yeah, you're right. It is really fun.
It's a fun character. Yeah. It's a good book. Good ensemble.
Yeah. Okay. So, Roy is telling her this story and she is just like, this is amazing.
Enamored. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's imagining everything. And then Roy interrupts the story to have her check his toes. So, like, he wants her, because he's got this, like, curtain, right? So he wants her to go on the other side of the curtain and hold his toe, and then he's going to guess which one she's touching.
Yeah. And
it's a really, like, it's like she's 5. She doesn't really understand what's going on. And so, she holds one and then he's like, is it my big toe? And she moves over to the big toe and he's like, are you serious? Like, did I get it right? And she's like, yeah. Like, she doesn't want to disappoint him.
Apparently, from what we can tell from interviews and also the making of and everything we know about this movie, apparently this actress, she's not a professional actress, so a lot of the stuff she's doing in this movie is instinctual. I never had a problem with that. It never seemed like an amateurish performance. If anything, it just seemed like a young actress who is not only so playful, but so open to every single scene. It's weird, but she's got a great chemistry with Lee Pace.
She really does. And Tarsem told Lee Pace, like, I don't want her to know that you can walk in real life.
That's right.
So he had to pretend he couldn't walk for the duration of the shoot. Because I think they did all the, like, hospital stuff first.
Yeah.
Because they are at the end of the movie, in, like, the story. So she must have known later on that he actually could walk.
That's weird. I wonder...
Like, she must have been like, what? It's
the most mind-blowing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you meet, like, Daniel Day-Lewis making My Left Foot, and at the end of it, like, oh, you're an actor? Oh, that's...
Yeah.
That's gotta be wild.
You're like, oh, you're not a Mohican? Like, dang, you really had me.
You didn't really jump into that waterfall? You had a stunt man?
Yeah.
Lies!
I know. And then he's like, oh, I should have kept it going.
Your name isn't Hawkeye?
I don't know. What if there's still people who like fake?
You're from Ireland? You're not even Native American? Wait. Should we even be making this movie, Michael Mann?
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So she's doing the toe thing. It's like a really sweet scene, but it's also sad because like the desperation that Roy feels.
Yeah.
You can feel that.
But it's very funny because, as
Yeah.
you said, her childlike view of the world is this wonderful contrast because he's all desperation and hot sweats and depression. I love Pace's performance in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he's wonderful, and it's really weird, but their chemistry is really, I think, one of the things that propels so much of the movie.
Oh yeah, I feel like if it was just the story part of it without them in the real world, like cultivating this friendship, I don't think this movie would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I agree.
that's just my opinion. Okay, so the tale continues, and then Roy tells Alexandria that he needs her to get him some pills so that he can sleep. And the first time you see this, you're probably thinking, oh, yeah, I mean, he's in a lot of pain, or he's...
It's a reasonable request.
Yeah, a reasonable request.
Maybe you shouldn't ask a child, but sure,
Yeah.
fine. Nothing
Where's
weird about
Nurse
that.
Evelyn?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you realize he's asking her to get him morphine so that he can basically OD and kill himself.
Yeah.
And, you know, he has this whole thing. And this is true. So...
You know from your morphine years? What do you mean?
No, about Alexandria. That she misread because he spells out morphine on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And he wants her, like, do you know what this says? Can you tell me what these letters are? And she got the E confused for
The actress did.
The actress
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
For a 3. And so Tarsem put that into the script. That when she got the bottle of morphine from, like, she sneaks in, like, she agrees to do it for him. She's like, I'll get you these pills, but you have to keep telling me the story. He's like, I can't keep going with this story unless you get me these pills. And so it's a whole bottle. And when she brings it to him, there's only 3 pills in there because the way he spelled it out had a 3 at the end.
Yeah.
She said, he's like, well, what'd you do with the rest of them? And she's like, I put them in the toilet. I flushed them down. You said you only needed 3. So he's like, I guess I'll just get a really short nap, you know.
There's a lot of tonal shifts going here. There's the pathos of Roy's character. There's the discovery, but also the sense, the true vulnerability of Alexandria.
Yeah.
And then every time we move over to the fantasy world, it's wondrous to watch, but there is this sense of like, this is an extension of all the emotional reality that we're watching that's happening in real life. Yeah, I mean, like, the film is sometimes really funny. At times it's very dread-inducing. At times it's grisly in its violence. At times, although not a gory movie, but I mean, I think emotionally it's very intense at times. But like, it makes those transitions. I mean, I'd say again, like Wizard of Oz. It's that kind of thing where it's kind of pulling into all the ability of storytelling to kind of change moods, change chapters. I never had a problem with the changes in tone, which sometimes it's jarring, but I feel like the movie always earned the leaps that it makes.
And do you think Roy literally only befriended her to get the morphine?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a desperation to him, and I feel, it probably occurred to him very quickly that he could,
manipulate her?
Yeah, to get the pills.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, she is the only friend he has.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And I think he recognizes that pretty quickly, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then, when he takes the 3 pills she gets him, he comes up with another plan. And while there's another patient across the way from him, and he tells her, like, go into his little bedside table and steal his pills. Because he's thinking, I'll just take that guy's pills. And so he basically ends up taking them all. And then the next day, he falls asleep. The next day she sees somebody dead on, with a sheet over them.
Yeah.
And
she assumes it's him.
She's like freaking out. It ends up being another guy. And when she goes back to Roy's room, he's there, but he is so angry because it turns out those pills were sugar pills. The guy is totally fine. They're just giving him placebos because he thinks he's sick. He's a hypochondriac. And Roy is just like, you're not even sick. And it's really scary for her.
Yeah. This is, I mean, it reminds me of when I was a child and I'd see an adult freaking out or whatever reason. It's just, there's just no, it's one thing to have a tantrum when you're 5. It's another thing to see someone in their 30s freak out. Yeah. So it's I definitely feel it whenever I watch that scene. It's like, oh, I remember. You just kind of freeze when you see someone, especially when someone you care about.
Yeah, because she was so glad that he wasn't the one dead.
And he's deeply disappointed. Yeah.
he's like, this is the worst day of my life. I thought I wasn't waking up. He just went into like a sugar coma.
Sounds nice. That's how I go to sleep most nights.
So finally, she's able to like go back and see him and check on him. And of course he's gonna finish the story because he still thinks he can get morphine from her. And she does. She goes and gets it, and she ends up falling and hurting herself, like going into a coma. And
to only talk about the movie from this way makes it sound like some weepy melodrama. And again, if you're listening to this, and you're like, I thought I'd listen just see if I even want to see this movie. It's very hard to convey the tone of this thing because the fantasy sequences, which the movie often reverts back to, they're so amazing. The movie never feels like a soap opera, which is how it sounds like when we're describing these scenes, which take place in the present day. But at this point, when the little girl injures herself pretty severely, the movie at one point switches to stop motion animation to create a scene that would have been very, very hard to watch. So I thought that was a brilliant touch. Because this whole thing is about storytelling, but in this case it's like they're using a different form of storytelling to basically get us through a part that would be almost unbearable to watch a child go through this surgery and being fixed up in a hospital room. So I don't know, this shouldn't work. And there are some critics, I mean, like, it's not hard to find a negative review of this movie online. But there is also the other side of that. Roger Ebert was the one, the late great Roger Ebert, who most people who love movies miss and love Roger Ebert. Ebert was madly in love with this movie, and what I have to say about that, I think he got it, and I don't mean that condescendingly. Like, look, it's not about not getting or getting this movie. This movie either works for you or it doesn't. But I mean, I do feel like this movie earns its mood swings, of which there are many. And
do you think it has mood swings because of Roy?
It's also because we're shifting realities. We're looking at life through the point of view of a little girl, the way she envisions storytelling. And this is something to consider that I really love about this movie. This movie takes place before television existed. So there isn't other than the movies that she sees, these black and white cliffhangers, she doesn't have a sense of, what visual storytelling would eventually become. So when she's envisioning, the Black Bandit in this case, it looks like the Lone Ranger. It looks like Tarzan. It looks like Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Like everything looks like every childhood fantasy wrapped up in one. And again, like, the movie visually looks like The Adventures of Baron Munchausen often. So yeah, it's kind of like, and certainly even the way it ends too, it's not only a tribute to film, but just how storytelling really is like an extension of who we are, how we tell our stories, and how we tell the stories that are personal to us. Because this is about, the very essence of, like, well, if you can tell a narrative where your protagonist is you, and you're disguising it with all these mythic and larger-than-life qualities, but really what you're doing is you're using your imagination to tell basically what's going on with you, which is one of the best things that stories can do.
Well said.
It's going to be a test afterwards. I hope you all took notes.
Okay, well, Roy comes to see her, when she wakes up.
This is such a beautiful scene. I always
This-
lose it whenever this part happens.
Oh
Yeah,
my
no, it's
gosh.
great. Lee Pace is wonderful in this scene. Um, yeah, I love it. It's so beautiful. The little girl has this bandage wrap over her head,
I
and
know.
it's the first time that he's treating her like an adult. He's so painfully honest with her. It's so moving. I love this part.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, so I guess like in this part she wants him to finish the story. And so he's so distraught and he's still suicidal. And he's also so upset that he's been, reprimanded by the hospital for what he did. Like they all know that he was trying to get her to get him drugs. So he basically starts killing off all of the characters
Yeah.
in the story in these really horrible but also inventive ways.
It's like a Friday the 13th movie. No, there's a shot that a lot of people have noted. There's a scene where a character is he suddenly finds his back just stuck with all these arrows, and he falls backwards.
Oh yeah,
and
so he's like laying on the arrows.
it's like
a
he's
table.
on a bed of arrows. Yeah, it's
yeah.
Again, like to describe it that way, it sounds stupid, but to see
It's
the
so
film,
tragic.
it's tragic, but it's also, I mean, it's
Artistic.
stunning. It's
Yeah.
like, again, it's like the swimming elephant. And, for a film that did not have a Harry Potter budget, it's full of imagery that you probably haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm. So Governor Odious is killing off all of our people here, all of the heroes. And finally, Roy is like meeting his match, right? And so Governor Odious is killing him, and he's drowning in the water. And Alexandria is like, no, he has to live, And Roy's like, he can't. He can't do it. I mean, he's basically telling her, I can't
wanna
live.
die.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to die. Like,
He's finally being an adult.
I have nothing to live for. My life is crap.
It's a lot to tell a child, but in the
Yeah.
nature of this story, yeah, like he's finally telling her with storytelling, he's telling her like, look, I don't want to live anymore. I feel exactly where this character is. I feel like I'm in the depths of despair. There's nothing further that could happen. There's nowhere else I can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, she gets him to change his mind.
Yeah.
And she shows up as like one of the heroes in the story. And she latches onto Roy as like this father figure because, her real dad is gone.
Yeah.
And so he kind of like sees that he does have something to live for eventually, but it when I say that, it sort of sounds like, oh, then he makes this turnaround, but it really feels real the way it happens.
Yeah, and it becomes about how the narrative that he's spinning becomes more of a, I mean, it's suddenly we're seeing the characters that we don't like really get it, which is which is very satisfying.
Yeah, the Governor Odious eats it finally, so that's good. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think the overall like message from Roy is at this point? Like he has hope finally?
Yeah, I think he has a new lease on life. I don't know if he, completely gives up being suicidal, but I think that Alexandria makes him realize his value, certainly not only to her, but also just as a human being. Mm-hmm. I think the coda in the movie, the epilogue rather, I think the epilogue that the film ends on, which is, it winds up being a movie within the movie, where Alexandria is watching a film. Initially, they're all watching it together.
They're all
in the
watching
hospital.
it together, yeah.
And then it becomes, afterwards, she's talking about, because it seems like she might have lost touch with them after the hospital or just hasn't seen him in a while. But she talks about how she would go and see movies again and again, and she would always see him. She would always recognize him as the stuntman in the movie. And it's beautiful because, if anything, you get the sense that no matter what happened to Roy, this element, like storytelling, will always be their language. Storytelling is always the thing that connects them. And it continues on in the form of every time she goes to the movies, every time she sees a guy on a horse that jumps off a cliff it's always him.
Yeah.
So she's always able to see it, and she recognizes and she laughs when she sees him. Yeah, and it's, you know, on the one hand, it's probably the only for me anyway. I think it's the only really maudlin shot in the movie where they're all in the hospital room. They're all watching this makeshift movie together.
And well, no, it's the movie that he was injured on.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when they like cut out his stunt.
Yeah. The tragic part of it.
The tragic part of it.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, "Oh, they cut out your stunt." Like.
But at the same time, it's like he's able to rewrite. He's able to rewrite and actually have a future. So that's also the nature of storytelling. It's editing. It's.
But we also don't know if he, like, even though
how cured he is.
Yeah. So we don't know if he ever regains the feeling in his legs and he can go back to being a stuntman. But Alexandria, that's what she sees.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's yeah. So. I think it's fine that it ends the way it does, because there's not and they all lived happily ever after. No, like this is a gritty time in life. These two characters have been through so much, and it really, if anything more, it's about the fact that they're still together at the end of it. So their bond has survived, their ability to communicate through storytelling, and finally by being honest with each other is intact.
So this is what it says. Alexandria narrates that she returned to her family in the orange grove safely and Mrs. Roy, but that her mother told her he is fine and in movies, and whenever she sees a silent movie with stunts, she will know he is there. And then we see a montage of silent movies and the brave stuntman who performed these like really dangerous acts.
Yeah, and she says every time she sees it, she knows which one is Roy. Yeah, I mean, that sounds
Did her mom kind of just tell her that?
Exactly.
So she wouldn't be sad.
Right.
You know, because...
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I don't know how much I trust that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how reliable anybody really is in this film.
But we are seeing them at very specific moments in their lives. I mean, it's one of these things like, sometimes you look at certain... I mean, like The Shawshank Redemption is an obvious example. It's like, well, then what happened? Well, it doesn't matter. At the end of the film, they're together, and that's everything. Who cares? They can have a stroke and die. A tsunami can wash them, and I mean, there's so many things that could happen to Andy and Red after the shot, but who cares? What matters is the final frame of that film. Yeah. Because that's I don't know. Even like in life, it's like sometimes like whatever happens to that person. Well, the last time I saw that person, it was so magical and meaningful, and the stuff that was said between us was so good. It's like that's my friendship with that person, and it's a shame it didn't go on, but sometimes life is like that. Yeah.
Man, feels kind of sad.
It's a very fun movie, I gotta say, and it has a sense of humor. So it's not. It does. One of my favorite film critics named Walter Chow, he recently wrote about there's a difference between a movie being pretentious and pompous. This movie is pretentious. There's nothing wrong with pretentious. Pretentious means you care a lot. It means that you have, you're really going above and beyond to make it something that matters. Yeah. Being pompous means you don't have respect for the audience, for one thing. And this movie loves its audience. This movie is about the audience. This film is about the relationship the audience has with the story and the characters. Yeah. I love movies like that. I do. Because, and that's also an element of all of Terry Gilliam's movies. Terry Gilliam makes movies because he wants to... He's one of these guys, if he could sit in your lap and tickle you while you're watching the movie, he would, because he's a madman. He's crazy. But he also wants your engagement, and I think great filmmakers are like that. It's a pomposity when you don't care about your audience.
Okay, well, would you change the ending of this movie?
No, I wouldn't change the frame of this movie. No.
You wouldn't?
No, I mean, in 2008, the only two movies I think I liked maybe a little bit more than this one. One is Be Kind, Rewind. That was my favorite film of the year. Be Kind, Rewind is also about the magic of movies, how they bring us together. There's so many things about that movie I love. It's a brilliant film, and it's a strange movie, and it's a little movie, and it's the only Jack Black movie I ever thought was a Best Picture worthy, but it is. And the other one that came out that year that I love is a Swedish vampire movie called Let the Right One In. Love that movie.
So is this a 4-star movie for you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree, because I remember really liking it, and then we watched it again. I'm like, oh yeah. I really like it.
It really pulls me in. I'm laughing at all the right parts. I'm sobbing at certain scenes. I mean, there's images in this film that are just so awe-inducing. Even, it's like, okay, I understand when that guy is coughing and a crow is coming out of his mouth. Clearly, that's some kind of digital effect. But there's other scenes in the movie where I don't quite know how the director did it, and I don't want to know, because I love it when movies can do that. When you're looking at something that doesn't seem possible. You don't get that a lot, especially because there is an over-reliance of digital magic in movies. There's just too much of it, to a point where we're so numb to it. And there's imagery in this movie that I've never seen before, and I've seen other films try to copy it. One of the magical things about this movie is the costumes by Eiko Ishioka. Eiko Ishioka won the Oscar for Bram Stoker's Dracula. She just does the greatest costumes. She designed M. Butterfly. She's a genius, and her costumes in this movie are just out of this world. Yeah.
Okay, so there's nothing you would change.
No, I think it's a perfect film. I do. Why? What would you change?
I don't think there's anything I would change, actually.
No, I mean, I dig this film. I mean...
Okay, but isn't this movie out of print right now, and it's coming back?
Let's currently...
talk about that.
Yeah, it was currently out of print. I mean, if you're a dork like me and you bought the DVD and Blu-ray when it came out, good, because that's very valuable at the moment. Yeah. So it's going to be back in theaters, I'm told, September the 27th, and then Mubi is going to have it on their screening channel, so people get a chance to see it. And I'm glad. I mean, it needs to be seen on a very big screen. I unfortunately I've yet to see it on the big screen. I'd love to have that opportunity. But no, it's an amazing film, and I mean, movies like this are why I go to movies in the first place. Frankly, I mean, look, I mean, I love lots of movies where it's two dudes in a room talking. That's literally a movie called Tape that Richard Linklater did. I love that movie, but it's two guys in a room talking, and then Uma Thurman walks in the room, and there's three people in the room, and the movie ends. Like, movies...
Oh, spoiler! I'm just kidding.
Sorry. Ruin that whole film that you're never going to watch. No, like, movies can be anything. It's not that they have to be one thing, but, like, right. I live for movies where, where my jaw is dropping and I'm seeing dreams. This movie is, you're seeing dreams. Tarsem, okay, so to be on the negatives, because it does sound like I'm just fawning over this movie, because I am. But he followed this movie up with a Julia Roberts Snow White movie called Mirror Mirror. It looks great. I was forgetting it as I watched it. It was one of those films where I'm just like, oh God, this sucks. It was just regular.
Yeah.
And then he did a big fantasy movie, and I gotta say, it was probably the closest thing he's done that I've almost liked. It was called Immortals. Henry Cavill was in it. It looks really cool, but if you've seen 300, you've seen Immortals. He did this memory sci-fi movie with Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley called Senseless. It was just okay. And after that, I've kind of lost track of what he's been up to. But I was really hoping that one of the big studios would see The Fall and go like, hey, like, we need to give this guy a shot, because clearly no one else can make a movie like this guy. He's playing with a very big set of crayons. This is one of these guys, like, he's making movies the way Coppola did and does, apparently. So, yeah, I was really hoping that The Fall would lead to something on that scale, and maybe it isn't. Maybe this is just like, look, I'm done. Maybe you make a movie like this and that's it.
Did you see Selfless?
I did see Selfless. That's the one with Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, it's really.
Emerald City was a TV series.
Didn't see Emerald City.
He directed a Lady Gaga music video.
I bet it's the most visually stunning Lady Gaga music video ever.
It probably is.
It's probably a safe bet to make.
Her 911 music video. Never seen it.
I don't know the song.
I think he did a Toyota commercial.
I'll bet it's the best freaking Toyota commercial you've ever seen. I bet you own a Toyota commercial because you saw that ad.
You own a Toyota, not a Toyota commercial.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then 2023, Dear Jassy.
Don't know. No, don't know. No, maybe it's good. I've not seen it yet.
That's it. Nothing since 2023.
Again, like, it took him so long to make this movie. He shot it all over the world. Maybe it's like one of these things, like, maybe he's like, I'll do that stupid Julia Roberts Snow White movie. What the heck? I'll do something easy now.
Right.
Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But, I mean, the guy who made The Cell and The Fall is a visionary. He is. You know, if he never made another movie after The Fall, I would completely understand. It's a shame that his subsequent works are not on that level at all, to put it mildly. But, no, this is...
Are you kidding? I'm going to go watch that Lady Gaga music video.
I love it. You don't care about it. Like, Lady Gaga music video, 911. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Would you change anything about this film?
No, I love it.
So,
yeah.
4 stars for you too.
Yeah, 4 stars. Yeah. I do wish Lee Pace had maybe done more, because I really...
He's done villains.
Like,
he was a villain in a Marvel movie.
Connection with her was just like so good.
Yeah, he's
so maybe
done some other stuff.
He has done stuff and I just don't know about it.
Yeah, I think... Man, Marvel fans will hate me for this. I think he's the villain in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay. I think.
Well, we'll find out.
He's done some stuff, but yeah, I mean, I from what I've seen, this is the one that really hit the hardest. Yeah, Pushing Daisies had quite the following. I never saw a single episode of it.
I think I saw one, and I was like, meh.
My excuse was it was always on a night when I was teaching, so I was never able to watch it. That was always my excuse. There's just some shows I never watched. Like 24, I never got into. What was the prison one? Prison Break. Lost. Never watched a single episode of Lost. There's just some shows I just never got into.
He's not a TV guy. This guy.
Well, I watched Sex and the City with you because you got the box sets. It's like, yes. Season 3, here we go. Let's do it.
Okay.
What's up with Samantha and the girls?
Okay, so Lee Pace, I don't know. He did an episode of Robot Chicken.
Well, that's awesome.
He was in
Book
some
of
movies.
Henry, that was bad.
Some movies I've never heard of.
Oh man, some of these are. Oh, Captain Marvel. Yes, these are not. Yeah.
See, it's
in Bodies. Oh, that movie was bad. Doggone it, man.
Okay, well, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I mean, if you've gotten this far, I mean, clearly you probably have seen the movie and you like it, and you just want to hear what people have to say about it. And obviously, as you can tell, even though I thought I did okay tonight, but I'm at a loss for words when describing a film on this level. This is, again, like, I go to movies because I want to see what someone's imagination looks like. It's one thing to write this stuff. It's another thing to create it. When movies are written and directed by the same guy, I get excited. Like, oh, okay, like this guy wrote it, so he dreamed it up. And now I get to see, like, if there's a connection between his intentions versus the final result. And a movie like this, I just go, God, like, this is
brilliant.
Yeah, this is why movies matter. And I love that this film, even though it was presented by Spike Jonze and David Fincher, really there were no other names in this film. But the name is Tarsem, and the movie is called The Fall. So check it out. It's one of a kind. It's still one of the best films of 2008.
Okay, I think we did it. That concludes our discussion of The Fall.